Hey, what's up? This is Scott with Level Up Tutorials. I've been getting a lot of questions about how I personally work, how I actually am building and testing websites. So in this series, I really wanted to go in and examine some of the process that I have when working. This video is going to be about the device lab that you see behind me that is in most of my video intros. So this device lab is something that I have that allows me to test on a whole bunch of different mobile devices at once, all sorts of different sizes of tablets and phones, just to make sure that things are working as expected. So let's get started so I can show you how I work and test on mobile devices and actually feel and use them. So the first step in my process really is just to have my website running on a server like I normally do. So this is a site for the new Level Up tutorial site. It's built in Meteor. So it's running on just a local host port 3000. Now this is pretty standard, especially if you're using Meteor. And as you can see, the site just functions totally normally in the development environment. But what I want to do is I want to be able to access this site on every single device on my wall and pretty much any device on my local network. Now to do that, I use a software called GhostLab. Now GhostLab is a paid software, and I should state that this video is not sponsored by them. I'm not receiving any kickbacks or anything like that. This is just exactly the process and the software that I do use personally. Now the nice thing about GhostLab is it essentially just broadcasts this website or this particular URL onto your local network. And it doesn't require you to install an application on any of the devices like some other mobile testing software does. You can even inspect the devices directly in GhostLab 2 using the Webkit Inspector that we're all familiar with. So let's go ahead, and I have this site with just localhost 3000 loaded. It says B-Boy Tools up here, but that's just a cache name from when I added the site originally, since most of my Meteor sites run on port 3000. If I click the play button here, what it does is it broadcasts on this new URL, and what you can do is click this launch button, or you can just simply copy this URL and you can open it up in a new tab, which I already actually have right here. You can see that if I refresh this just to make sure, you can see that at this address, which is 10.0.1.4:8005, you can see that this address is now available. So using GhostLab, which is the software here, it's broadcasting my localhost onto this new URL, this new local URL. Now what's cool about this is that any computer on that network that is then using that URL will have access to this website. So let me change the camera up and I can show you my desktop. So as you can see here, the desktop is getting the same URL, and what's nice about this is that I'm not having to run this website on this computer to see it and use it as I would. And if you'll notice, something really cool is that when I scroll on the desktop, it's scrolling on the laptop as well. Now, this can get a little buggy with some JavaScript stuff, and that's one thing that you're going to want to test. Some JavaScript events may not fire correctly between the two, but what's nice here is that what I'm looking at here is genuinely what I'm looking at here, and there are some things that you are going to want to test the same way that you normally would by setting up a staging environment and then just browsing it that way. Now you can see that if I change URL, it still will maintain this sort of one-to-one thing. Now I have noticed some bugginess occasionally with this app, and it's usually nothing that a nice refresh won't take care of. But what this does is it allows me to, right now, it allows me to see this on a laptop, and allows me to see it on a desktop immediately together side by side. And I can see that maybe the space between this image and this text right here is a little too much. On the laptop it looks fine, but on the desktop I might want to consider crunching this in just a little bit. So now let's actually talk about mobile and the device lab, because that's mainly the purpose of this video. So as you can see, I have this pretty sweet wall of devices here. A lot of these phones and tablets are just things that I've acquired over a long period of time. In fact, one of the iPhone here was even donated to me by a family member. Other devices are just sort of old phones I've come across, and unfortunately because of that I am missing some things. So I primarily have Android devices. While I do have this iPhone 4S, I am missing an iPad. So there are some things still that I do not have for this device lab, but it's honestly better than nothing. And you might be wondering why you would want to even test on these devices rather than just using the Chrome inspector. Well, the really reason is that it really makes a difference to actually feel your website on these devices. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna load this website up on all of these different devices. Really, all you have to do is make sure you're on the network, browse to that URL, and you will be fine. So as you can see now that the URL has been entered into all these sites, we now have them available to be used and even inspected through GhostLab. Now, this is really cool because I can come in here and I can physically manipulate this site. Now I've turned off the actual syncing. So the syncing can get a little crazy, especially with the Meteor site like this that's doing, hot reloads and stuff like that. So I didn't want all of these devices to be automatically linked to what every single other one is doing. But I can come in here and say, okay, this is how the menu feels to use. And here I've selected tutorials. And one thing you gotta keep in mind is that the load times are not gonna be totally one-to-one. In fact, that took a really long time to load, but in the real world, it's very, very quick. Now, even one thing you can tell instantly is just the color difference between all of these devices. The purple looks entirely different with the color of some screens. And I can come in here and I can just feel this tiny little iPhone screen. This text feels way too big. It doesn't work the same way it might work on a larger device or even a tablet here. And if I pull this open, the homepage in every single device, you can see that it looks like there's something wrong with the touch here of the homepage, where on one of the other devices it worked just fine. Now, as you can see, I even have my own personal device here, which I can use to really feel out this website. And you can see it's obvious that I've been doing a lot more testing on my own device because it looks better than some of the smaller devices that I've been having here. So while this is really nice to have this available, it's important that you are testing on a whole bunch of different screens, because otherwise you might end up with something like you see in the iPhone. Let's actually do a closer zoom in on that, and you can see exactly the difference there. As you can see with the iPhone, when you have the top bar here and you have this big old header, I mean, this just takes so much room. You don't even get to any of the copy. The margin there is a little too much. Even when I scroll a little bit too far, sometimes there's a weird white line. When I go to menu, let's select menu here. You can see that the options are too big. They're too big. The sign in goes all the way here, and since this is all position fixed, I'm not able to really scroll here. When I select something, yeah, the loading is going to take a bit of a time, but that's more of a GhostLab issue than anything else. And even there, the loading icon was not well placed for this kind of screen here. And now we see that in this small of a screen, this 2-column is definitely not working. These icons are way too small. The text just doesn't sort of work. If I clicked show topics, now when I click show topics, it looked like something was weird with the hit zone, because what it did is it actually filtered my videos here. And you'll notice that the filtered version is in 1 column, and this looks great. So on this sort of little device here, we really want to make sure that it's always going to 1 column whenever there is in fact these thumbnails. Now let's actually check out some of the tablet versions. Down here I have a Nexus 9 and a Galaxy Tab 10-inch. Now you can see that the vertical with these is both going to essentially be more of a 1-column thing, and it's going to look less like the desktop and a little bit more like the phones. If you scroll here, you can see exactly how it's going to feel, and if we click menu, you can see that that menu looks and feels really nice. Click tutorials here, we're going to get this loading. Like I said, again, GhostLab is really the issue with the loading here. Now in addition, let's click start learning on the 10-inch tablet. So as you can see here, there's clearly something wrong with this 10-inch tablet. Now I'm using Chrome on both of these, so I know it's probably not a browser thing, but maybe a breakpoint thing having to do with the device itself. this is something I would want to explore further. Obviously, this isn't manifesting itself on the actual desktop version. So that's one reason that device testing specifically can be helpful. You might run into an issue like this where it's not taking up the full width here, and that doesn't make itself known on the actual desktop. Now, what's nice about having a device lab like this, or just simply having your devices open with Ghost Lab, is that pretty much anytime you're working on something, if you have them synced or even if you don't, you can just head to the device itself, click on it, and sort of see how it feels without having to do any actual pushing to any sort of test server. So I can feel there that on the tablet here, that hit zone for this particular video, it didn't feel big enough. It just didn't feel, I wasn't confident that when I clicked that I was clicking the right one. Now in addition, this actually looks really nice for the tablet size, so I know that this breakpoint is doing good things. Now let's say I wanted to see this all in landscape. Let's check out how I managed to do that. I actually cut a ridge in the piece of wood here that allows it to be turned completely on its side, and if you'll notice, every single one of these devices has a piece of wood right there on the side of it to hold it up for when this is turned sideways. So I'm gonna zoom out here and I'm gonna show you what this looks like on its side. So as you can see now, I have every single device in landscape, and one thing you'll notice is that the difference between the 10-inch tablet and the 9-inch tablet actually becomes a little bit more pronounced here. While we both have the filtering no longer hidden behind some sort of toggle navigation, the 9-inch tablet has 2 columns up and the 10-inch tablet has 3 columns up, and both of them look really good. The sizing is nice on there and everything just sort of works. However, one thing that's not working is if you come to, let's say, this Galaxy S6 here and it's on its side, this homepage, it doesn't feel great. So we have this headline, takes up most of the space, we have this navigation bar that's maybe a little bit too much, and we're not getting enough of the picture when we scroll here. This might actually be a little bit better with more of the desktop style layout where we're maybe going to 2 columns or something. Even worse, when we go to menu, there's no way that I can get to all of our options here. So as you can see, testing on all of these devices is really something that's going to be totally necessary for you to understand exactly how your users are experiencing your website. Now, you don't necessarily need a big board of devices like this. Like I said, just simply having these devices available and using your website on the device itself rather than just within Chrome DevTools is endlessly useful. So I did build this device lab myself. Unfortunately, there are no plans for it. I just sort of made it up as I went, cut some pieces, some notches here and there, drilled some holes for USB cables, and then I just have a USB hub mounted to the back of it so all these USBs can be powered at once, making sure that all of the devices are always fully charged. So I hope you enjoyed that look at how I actually use my device lab in practice to help me develop and understand my websites better on mobile devices. In upcoming Inside Level Up tutorials videos, I'm going to be diving a bit more into my personal setup for how I use my text editors and IDEs. I'm going to be diving into how I record these videos, and I'm going to be diving into what I do for actual work and testing on my websites. And hopefully it can give you a better insight about how these tools are used in a real working environment. So as always, this is Scott with Level Up Tutorials. If you have any questions or comments, leave this comment in the video, hit me up at Twitter or Facebook at Level Up Tutorials. If you want to help support, head over to store.leveluptutorials and check out what I have for sale over there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.